why would someone accept this teleological picture to begin with? I mean, obviously.
Or would they? I think they take. I think. Are you asking like whether someone would grant that teleology exists, or whether
why would someone ever accept that?
Or why would they value it? Or why do they value it? Or why do they accept that it exists?
The first thing is like why would you accept it? And the second question is a value theoretic question, like why would you value it? But like start with the first question, why would you accept its existence?
That one kind of falls into a bunch of different theories of teleology, in which I don't believe a lot of them. But the one that I do kind of ascribe to is more so just a description about tendencies that a certain organism has. And so from those tendencies, we kind of get this language that ascribes sort of functions and dysfunctions to it. And then I guess I can give like a probabilistic argument for why they typically have functions, but a lot of the commitments that someone's going to have for like teleology existing, those just aren't baked into my view because...
Wait, why they have functions directed toward what?
Functions directed towards any given action that it's particular to the organism.
Wait, so functions directed toward any particular action?
Mm-hmm.
So like any action, of course, like anything is going to have a function then.
No, given given the organism, like different organisms are going to have like different set functions.
So that's saying they have different natures because it can be directed toward anything.
Yeah, like it's just a description of tendencies.
That's so trivial. Like obviously different. So like what's important is being said here?
There's nothing important. If by important you mean something different than what's trivial. But that's just to answer the question.
Yeah, so what am I supposed to get out? What am I supposed to get out of that?
Something that you already believe in.
What is that?
That different organisms have different tendencies towards a function, which we can...
Yeah, but what's the conclusion supposed to be? Like, what is this point?
No, I didn't give it as a premise. You just asked me why someone would grant it.
Wait, so all you mean by teleology is that things have purposes which we assign them?
Yeah.
They can be assigned?
Yeah. There's like... I'm a little agnostic on whether it's completely up to us to decide their functions.
Well, that's very important. I don't
think it's really it's not really important because I do
because I don't believe in mind independent purpose.
Oh, because I could take I could take that view where it is like subjectively defined, or I could take a view where it's not subjectively defined and that it doesn't really affect the conclusion.
Okay, okay, go ahead with the argument.
Yeah, and so for clarity of language, there's a particular view of teleology that's more so, I guess, biologically influenced, or you take like a biologically exclusive account of teleology, and then once you kind of reduce any commitments there to something that, as you would call trivial, there's actually a title for that view. It's more so like teleonomy, and so that's more specifically the view that I take. But I just use teleology because most people understand it better. But I feel like that answers the first question. And then as far as the second question, as to why someone would value it, I just make the argument that it has a set of, or it has, properties that we usually value, which is a set of anthropomorphic traits, or a certain level of anthropomorphic traits that we're able to empathize with. And then I can make the argument that we already do sort of intuitively value those.
Yeah, but no one's going to empathize with a fetus, or like a zygote.
I take it that way, too.
You empathize with a zygote? Really?
Yeah.
Do you think like the majority of people empathize with the zygote?
I think the majority of pro-lifers do when they...
I don't think so. I don't think any... Well, I think when people see a zygote and it dies, they're like... I don't know how you empathize with them the same way you like empathize with an infant, or you empathize with other people who these anthropomorphic traits you're pointing out would, support. Like, you don't look at a zygote and feel bad for them the same way you feel bad for an infant in pain. It's not the sort of same empathy you feel.
I grant that it's not the same. That's compatible with my view. Like,
yeah, wait, so the whole empathizing is in a whole different sense then. Because like the empathizing that I thought you were talking about is like the empathy I feel when, a little child gets hurt, or the empathy I feel when a friend's family member died. So like this is an entirely different thing, which I don't know if like you would grant huge moral value based on that at all.
Well, I take. It seems like you're assuming just how much people empathize with it. But I take reports of pro-lifers and all the advocacies. Using such
reports?
strong language such as like it's murder. I can't believe you murdered a child.
What reports of pro-lifers do you have for this?
Like reports of advocacy.
Advocacy for that doesn't mean they're empathizing with them.
I think it raises the probability of them empathizing with them to the point.
What do you take empathizing to be?
I think like feeling bad for them in the sense that they feel bad when like an infant dies. So like they compare it to infants all the time.
Wait, okay, they feel bad for them. So that's what you mean by empathize. Okay.
Yeah, like, and then I can give like a
why
theory
why
they
would
feel
they
bad.
feel bad for a zygote that dies?
Because they recognize, I theorize that they recognize that the zygote is similar to them.
Yeah. Wait, is that going to make them similar to them in what respect?
And
Like when I empathize with like a child or empathize with my friend, I base it on like similar cognitive experiences I have with them, or like I can put myself in their shoes and sort of see the pain they feel. But with a zygote, that sort of thing is not possible.
Yeah, if you're asking empathize in what respect or what traits that they share similarity to, well, that's the question that I already answered. By it having a teleological predicate of rationality, like it developing towards a certain set of mental states.
Wait, no, I know that's what you think. You think the fact that we empathize with things with these anthropomorphic traits means we would also empathize with the zygote. Is that not the claim?
Yeah, that's what I think. That
yeah, and I'm drawing a distinction between all the things you want to, say support that hypothesis are vastly different because these things have consciousness. The reason you're able to empathize with them is because you know what it's like to be in pain, and you can sort of put yourself in the shoes. You can't like put yourself in the shoes of like a non-conscious zygote.
Yeah, but your counter hypothesis makes predictions that I don't think are true, and so I think those predictions not being true.
Look, I'm saying, the support for what is your support for the claim that people, empathize with anthropomorphic traits? Is it not that I feel bad when a 1-year-old gets hurt, or I feel bad when my friend's, friend dies? Is that not the
No, that's not just that's not the only evidence that I have. That's not what I'm using to get to
the other empathy.
If I was just taking that data, then I would probably get to like a pro-choice conclusion or something more like what you're
what's the other sort of empathy you're feeling that doesn't like? Don't give me cases that are only like applying to zygotes. Give me other cases that you think are similar where we empathize with them.
No, I'm not giving cases of empathy. I'm just giving, and I guess you could infer that is cases of empathy, but I'm more specifically just giving points of data that are going to raise the probability of us actually empathizing with a particular trait that is true.
I just want to know. You made the claim that I want to know what like cases in which we empathize with things with anthropomorphic traits that are like the fetus.
Yeah, so when we empathize with animals like chimpanzees as opposed to pigs.
They have consciousness, though.
I know, but I know
not like the fetus.
I know, but every time you try to assert your counter,
I love you.
Just stop. Like also, yeah, like I need you to stop interjecting because you're interjecting with a counter hypothesis that makes predictions that aren't going to be true, and so when those predictions aren't true, that lowers the probability of your hypothesis.
Oh my God! Just tell me which things are similar to zygote and you empathize with them.
Every time I do, you're going to interject with a counter hypothesis in which I already have a rebuttal to.
Like Jesus Christ, just tell me which things are like the zygote that I empathize with.
Which are okay? What do you think my answer to that question is going to be? I've already answered.
Give me an example.
An example of a trait that you empathize with, or an example of...
An example of a being that's like a zygote that I empathize with.
A being that's like a zygote. Oh, a zygote's very particular, but a zygote does have traits that I feel like you do empathize with through the other points of data that I'm able to use to raise the probability of that trait being the thing that you empathize with.
Okay, give me an entity without consciousness that I empathize with.
The zygote.
That's not the zygote.
Okay, I don't think there's any other ones.
Okay. So, like, all the support you're going to derive...
That's not all the support.
Look, okay, just take it the case. Like, take this counter hypothesis that you empathize with beings that have consciousness. You can know what their pain feels like to some extent. You can kind of put yourself in their shoes through your perspective. And those are the beings which I would say you have empathy for. And they usually do have these anthropomorphic traits. So we empathize with beings with anthropomorphic traits and consciousness. Now, you want to say this only, now you can extend it out to all anthropomorphic traits, but you can't seem to give me another example of a being that just has anthropomorphic traits and we can empathize with them if it was true, if we truly just empathize with being with anthropomorphic trait simpliciter and not with consciousness also, you surely should be able to give me more examples. Like,
That would be true. I feel like the zygote is a very particular case. I can't really think of many other examples of pregnancy.
you can't think of many other examples because we don't know that.
But I can say that you can take a counter hypothesis. We can evaluate the predictions that counter hypothesis is going to make, and then once those predictions fail to be true, I think that lowers the probability of
take my counter hypothesis. What predictions?
I feel like the predictions of your counter hypothesis, if that's the thing that we actually empathize with, which is a level of consciousness, I feel like a lot more people would be vegan, and I feel like people's resistance towards veganism and their responses towards name the trait, for example, are all evidence that raises the probability of my hypothesis being
true.
That it's actually a level
empathize with animals in factory farms?
I think you can. I do.
Yeah, you don't think the average person like empathizes with like the fact that they're not vegan doesn't mean they can't empathize with these animals. It means that there's a particular societal norm.
I didn't make a moral claim. I'm not saying they can't.
No, you said this is like really dumb. Obviously, I'm not talking about a modal claim here.
I know, but like I feel like you're not. You're kind of strawmanning my criticism.
No one is strawmanning your critique. The fact that people aren't vegan doesn't mean they don't empathize with the animals in factory farm. It just means
I didn't make that assertion. I'm just saying that it lowers the probability.
It doesn't at all. Like,
I think it does. I think that if we...
It literally doesn't at all. Most, like the vast majority of meat eaters will empathize with the animals when they see them in pain. They think it's a bad thing when they see them in pain. They're not going to change their behavior because it's a societal norm. That does not mean in any sense that they can't empathize with them.
No, I agree. I think that they would. And I feel like even though they empathize with the trait that I'm prescribing, I feel like they should also empathize with other traits such as cognition. Those are not mutually exclusive with my position. What I am saying is that whether or not they do in fact do that, well, I think we can look at a contrast in where we give them examples. So we try to, show them videos, and then they still hold some sort of resistance with the response. And I feel like the responses to those examples, when we run the trait evaluative process, end up being, a contrast that is predicted under my hypothesis.
What does this have to do with anything I said? I don't get the point.
It's just articulating how people valuing other traits such as cognition is not incompatible with my hypothesis.
That's not what I said. Then that's also not my claim. My claim was that empathy is between a being that has consciousness. Like it's the nature of empathy, and you're claiming that empathy is a broader concept and applies to all anthropomorphic beings, it seems. And you're not able to give me any other example besides a zygote, which is kind of crazy if you think the concept is that broad, yet you're only able to name one example. It sort of kind of questions whether or not you're capturing the right things.
It seems like you're a little assuming what I mean by empathy. I'm not intentionally making it super broad. I don't want it to be super broad. But I will say I think a semantic contrast is what you mean by empathy. I actually do grant that. I think my usage of the term empathy is a little strange. But
okay, what's your usage? Is feeling bad for?
Yeah, it's where we identified something that is similar to us within an external entity, like something apart from us. And then whenever harm is done to that being, we feel harm vicariously.
Okay, surely that's just very weak evidence then for pro-choice.
I didn't give that. That wasn't supposed to be evidence. That was just semantic reduction.
No, look, no. Take your claim in its entirety. You're saying that, since you have empathy for these types of beings, that's what grants them moral value. The empathy is supposed to be playing a role in the value.
I think all people do.
Look, if all empathy means is people have this I don't even know if it's not even the severely bad feeling when zygotes die. People aren't really not that concerned when zygotes die. I mean, they might
seems like
on the surface. Look, a normal person out there is just not very concerned when a zygote dies. A normal person sees very little value in zygotes in general. They don't empathize with zygotes at all. There's miscarriages all the time. No one really is saying, I feel really, really bad for these a bunch of miscarriages that happen. No one's doing that. No one's empathizing with them in that way.
Well, I feel like parents would feel really sad whenever they miscarry. I understand why they wouldn't, but I feel like it's not super uncommon for them to feel. Yeah, parents.
But they're not feeling bad for the zygote. They're feeling bad for other reasons. That's not They might
You
feel
don't
bad
think-
because they wanted to raise a child. They
But
don't.
you don't think that people like standing outside an abortion clinic saying "Don't murder that child"? You don't think that's evidence that counts in favor of them feeling like really bad?
Not really. I don't think they feel bad for this. I think they think abortion's wrong. I think they think maybe it's harmful, but I don't think they feel bad for the zygote or feel empathy for the zygote in any like the way that we feel empathy.
You
in
don't
other
think people?
cases.
You don't think people painting their entire trucks as a dead fetus? You don't think that's like trying to say something about the fetus?
It's trying to say
specifically?
something about the wrongness of abortion. It's not trying to say whether you empathize with the zygote.
I disagree. I mean, what? I mean, can I ask what kind of evidence you have for that?
Okay, if you take empathy as anything like I'm taking it to be, where it's like it's the same as the general meaning of empathy, where I feel bad for the 1-year-old who got hurt, or I feel bad for my friend whose friend died. No one, like, you talk to these pro-lifers, like they might say, oh, that's a human life, don't end it, we have this rule against killing human life, but they don't express the same empathetic concerns for the zygote. They don't say, oh my god, poor zygote, they must have went through hell, or poor zygote, something horrible happened to them, that's so bad for them. They just make claims about the wrongness of it or the harm it causes.
Well, I disagree. I feel like a lot of times when you engage in argumentation with like a pro-lifer, they're going to point to examples of like trying to humanize the fetus, or another word almost synonymous with humanize the fetus is like give it a level of anthropomorphic traits when they express the fetus or they represent the fetus in a dialect, and then they'll point to examples of like them ripping their limbs off and. It really seemed like
just graphic, and
I know. No, I know. I think the graphic language.
I mean, surely you don't think that has anything. Surely you don't think that graphic imagery has any bearing on the actual debate, right? I mean.
No, I'm not saying it has any bearing on the actual debate. I'm just saying that it's evidence for the idea that they actually do empathize with the fetus and they feel bad for the fetus specifically, not just like some deontic norm that they have. Sorry, I understand you're not.
If they learn that, if they learn that like the zygote can't feel any pain, so getting its limbs ripped off, they're not really feeling anything. It's just a little bit graphic. Maybe if they do reflection, they won't empathize with the zygote in the same way that you're claiming they do.
I think that's possible, but that's where I sort of consider. Like I 100% agree. I think they overestimate how much they care about the fetus. I don't think they would care. I don't even think they should. I don't even think they should care as much as they do. But I think they have reason.
Did you get a call, Lucario?
No, my shit cut out for no reason.
Oh.
Well, if we're taking care, like sort of like empathy. I mean, obviously, I think they care morally about the fetus, but empathize is a whole different thing.
No, but do you remember my? Not sorry, that's not rhetoric. But like, given my semantics of empathy, do you not think that goes through?
Feel bad for them? I really don't know.
Not just feel bad. It's just when you identify that it has a certain level of traits that are symmetrical with you. Like you share traits with that being, and then once harm is done to that being, vicariously of you sharing particular traits, which I would call anthropomorphic since you're human, then you feel bad for it.
But people can't really see themselves as zygote usually. Like, people can see themselves as a 1-year-old. They can see themselves as a teenager, but like when you change it to like a almost singular cellular organism, or like maybe some multicellular organism that really isn't that big, people can't really see themselves as that, so how are they going to empathize with that?
Oh, well, they can't empathize with it under your semantics, but I need to emphasize that I'm using my semantics when I say people do empathize with it, and examples of this are when they ask the question, what if you were a fetus, and what if your mother aborted you? I feel like that's a pretty common question in the abortion discussion.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean they're feeling bad for the fetus when it dies. I mean,
that's not supposed to say that they feel bad for it. That's just supposed to directly counter the point where you say, oh, they can't like put themselves in the fetus's shoes. Well, I feel like they try and as a pro-lifer, they try to put a pro-choicer in those shoes.
But they're not putting themselves in the fetus's shoes. By the way, they're making a scenario saying you wouldn't exist if your mother had worded you, which is true, but that's not putting themselves in the situation that a fetus is in. I actually don't think that's conceivable to do because a fetus doesn't have consciousness, and to like put yourself in a situation almost involves some similarity in consciousness.
Yeah, but don't you? I mean, I guess I can just keep giving examples, but what you're saying, just given the evidence that I have, I just completely disagree with it. And
Yeah,
then,
okay, like
I don't wanna-
I'll accept everything you've said so far. I'll grant you everything you said for the sake of argument. And what even follows? Okay, you have this very weak claim that people feel bad to some extent for the zygote. It's surely not the way they feel bad for an infant. It's not the way they feel bad for a teenager. So, like, the moral wrongness of abortion, then, if it's based on this empathy, like, people do not feel that bad for, like, this single cellular zygote or, like, this small organism. They just don't. So, like, there's no big moral reason against abortion for, like, the vast majority of people, given your argument.
I mean, given like just quantifying how much value they get, I'm not sure if I can really satisfy that other than just intuitively. I think that once you have this, this empathy, and just given my hypothesis, which is supposed to be an explanation as to why pro-lifers behave in dialects the way that they do. I mean, I would argue that they do have enough moral consideration for the following conclusions, such as conflict resolution.
Is someone already convinced by your position?
Yeah.
So wait, you're trying to convince people who are already convinced by your position with their position?
I feel like they're in denial. I think a lot of people are sort of just in denial of their intuitions.
Oh yeah, a lot of people are just in denial. They're not really telling you that they'd rather see 100 embryos burned than a child. They're just really in denial about that.
I think a lot of people. Do you think it's controversial to say a lot of people are in denial about their intuitions?
In this case, I think it's absurd to say that. I think a lot of people have intuitions that say a zygote isn't very valuable.
Okay, well, I take
They're
it
not sort of crazy for thinking that. I think it's kind of hard to say that a single cellular organism is like extremely valuable.
I take it that the evidence speaks to the contrary.
Speaks of what?
Speaks to the contrary.
Okay, regardless, you said a moment ago that your view is convincing to people who already hold your view. You think the majority of people already hold your view. They're just in denial about their intuitions.
I hypothesize that the majority of people have my view as sort of reconciliation for like veganism discussions or
but that's the reasonable thing is like when people see factory farms, they're actually really, really sad. When people see a single cellular organism die, they're just not really affected by it at all. They don't really care that much.
I feel like I disagree. I feel like a lot of them do. You just given that
a lot of them do. You just can't really name any of them. I mean,
I can't wait. I already did name them, and you just
okay. I mean, let's take it to plausibility. Like, if you're not, let's take it to plausibility of like what other people think. Like, do other people think this is convincing that majority of people are just in denial about their abortion positions? They actually think a singular cellular zygote is actually really, really valuable. Actually, really, really affected when zygotes die. They're really, really affected when a bunch of miscarriages happen for the zygotes. They think this like millions and millions, a whole genocide of zygotes is happening, and people are really, really affected by it. And they have these intuitions that it's a terrible thing happening. Do we think that people are just in denial about these intuitions?
I'm not claiming that they intuitively think it's comparable to like an infant or a teenager.
Jam, what if I say like the baseline or the foundation to morality is that there is intrinsic human worth to humanity?
I don't care.
Intrinsic. I don't.
Damn, you shut that down.
Damn, Hayden, I'm sorry. I felt bad for you right there.
Yeah, because if you defy that, it's to defy the categorical imperative.
I don't care.
No, damn,
Okay.
you got dropped.
Okay, so we were on the talking point of the intuition that was trying to be resolved. So let's continue.
I don't want to deal with Kant today.
So the thing is, like, to make the claim clear, you said majority of people are in denial about their intuitions regarding whether or not they feel bad for a singular cellular organism. And I'm sure these people are just in vast denial of whether they care about the zygotes who are miscarried for the sake of the zygotes, not for the sake of the woman who miscarry. They feel terrible for all the fetuses that are aborted. They, feel really, really bad for them. They're just in denial. And that's why arguments in the literature, like the embryo rescue case, have been so plausible to people. But they've been plausible to people, and they haven't even realized that, these zygotes, actually, you should feel really, really, really bad for them.
No, I think there's a little bit of a jump here. I'm not saying that they intuitively feel bad for them. I'm saying that they intuitively value a trait that, upon reflection, they would feel bad. Similar, this is almost exactly like, I guess you could argue with racism, or people had slaves. I wouldn't make the argument that intuitively, a typical Confederate, just doesn't feel bad whenever or I don't know if I can say it on live. TikTok's been weird, but a BLK person or a person of extreme color was unalived. I'm not going to make the argument that they intuitively actually feel really bad for it. But what I am going to make the argument is that I feel like the thing that justifies them enforcing legislation to protect white people, enforcing legislation to protect Latinos and all of the races that is exclusive of BLK people. Well, I think that falls under a particular trait that is also exclusive of cows and pigs. And so from those values, I'm able to infer that I think that intuitively they do value the level of anthropomorphic traits that they just haven't reflected upon as of yet.
Look, they can value anthropomorphic traits, but it can be conditional on something. It can be conditional on consciousness. Why would you... you're not able to give other examples of, anthropomorphic traits without consciousness that people value.
I'm not able to give other examples of an anthropomorphic being without consciousness.
Yes, that people value, right?
I'm not. No, period. No, that was just period. There wasn't anything else after that. I'm not able to give another example of something with a level of anthropomorphic traits without consciousness other than the zygote. So in the set that we would evaluate, it only has one member. So trivially, I'm not going to be able.
No, it only has one member that you can think of.
Oh wait, can you think of another
No, I don't agree with you. I don't value.
Well, no, I'm talking about the set. I'm not talking about my values. I'm talking about the set.
The set of beings with anthropomorphic traits without anthropomorphic.
And not just anthropomorphic traits. Anthropomorphic traits and no consciousness.
Anthropomorphic traits and no consciousness?
Yeah.
And by anthropomorphic traits, you mean closer to humans?
Yeah, with a level of
but then
humanity. Because you're accusing, because you're saying it's bad on my view because I can only name one that we value, but the set of all things, it's only one.
You can name hypothetical ones. All animals to some extent that are similar to human beings, like chimpanzees, would be part of the set.
Yeah, and we value chimpanzees more than a rat. And so I think that's just evidence from my view.
It mainly has to do with not anthropomorphic traits, I feel, but size, cognitive capacities. So yeah, of course we value chimpanzees.
Okay. What about dogs? Because dogs are smaller than a wolf, but dogs have been domesticated to display more anthropomorphic traits, and I think us valuing dogs more.
What even is an anthropomorphic trait? Dogs have been
they've been domesticated by humans, and now they display more human-like traits.
Oh, so if we domesticate something, its value goes up?
I think so. I think that's what happened with dogs. I'm pretty sure it would happen more with other animals.
There's a substantial change in moral value if you domesticate something.
I take it to be there's a substantial change in moral value when you run the trait evaluative process on a non-vegan. I think this is just more evidence for my view.
Wait. There's a substantial change in moral value when you run the trait. What are you even saying? The
trait evaluative process,
what does that even mean?
It's when someone can't name the trait. What Isaac usually does is he'll run the trait evaluative process where he'll ask okay, well, do you value a pig? And then someone says, wait, I need to wait. Do you understand the concept? Or
I understand. Yes, that doesn't change the moral value of the being in question.
It changes. People's answers seem to be indicative of that.
Look, you made this crazy statement that it's like what happens in here. You're not changing the moral value in the trait process. What?
No, I think no.
You gave a case where you domesticate something, and that changes the moral value. It really does, but that's not at all what's happening in the trait evaluation process he gives. And I think it's the equalization process he calls.
Oh, my fault. But in the trait equalization process, I take it that when people's answers change, the more you humanize the subject, you can take that, and you can also take their responses to, whether they value a canine, or whether we should have legislation that protects dogs as opposed to non-domesticated dogs. I think that's more evidence, and then you can give a counter hypothesis for like the chimpanzees.
It has like
and the
no
wolves,
support based on what you're saying, because all of that can be just explained by personal connections to their owners, and societal connections to people.
Well, I agree that there can be counter explanations.
No, that's like the full explanation. There seems to be like nothing with.
I don't know if it would be the full explanation. When I take all of these things into consideration, I'm not sure if I would get to the conclusion that all these respective counter hypotheses are just the full explanation. To me, it seems like there's a common denominator.
It seems like that's very unreasonable, that the change in the moral value is due to anthropomorphic traits instead of almost fully, like entirely due to like personal values and societal values of these things.
Well, not that it's like a dialectical responsibility of yours, but do you have evidence for that?
It's obvious.
Okay, well, I don't grant that.
Yeah, you don't grant that people value dogs because they're personally connected to dogs, and they know people personally connected to dog, and it's a fundamental part of our society.
That's not what I said. I just don't think it's entirely explained by that.
I said it's almost entirely explained. So yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know about almost entirely explained. I definitely don't think it's entirely explained.
Yeah, I think, and that's all your burden, not mine. So.
Okay, well, if you're only positing that it's almost entirely explained and not 100% entirely explained, then it seems like there's room for
very, very, very small anthropomorphic explaining you're doing there. It's not doing.
There's a very small anthropomorphic explanation. I mean, I feel like that's all I need.
If I grant that, sure. Okay. It's doing very little for your argument. It's not really.
Okay, well, I mean, given the other points of data, if you're just going to grant that there's like small points of data within all these other examples, I mean, I find that to be convincing to me. And it's not mutually exclusive with any counter.
It's not. Like, look, you've given a reason. You think that people are in denial in whether or not they feel bad for organisms, which are zygotes. Which I think you've given no evidence.
No, I already clarified. No, I already clarified the straw man. I don't think that intuitively they feel bad for it. Just like I don't think intuitively a Confederate feels bad for it.
After reflection, they'll feel bad for it. Okay.
Yeah, after reflection, I feel like they probably would. Just like after reflection, the Confederates started to feel bad for black people.
People have done no reflection on this issue at all.
No. I'm not saying when reflection you instantly agree with my position. I'm not saying that.
Look, obviously people have done reflection. They don't change their minds.
I feel like I've well, I mean,
and tons of people. I think the majority of the literature on abortion is now pro-choice. The majority of people working in this field are pro-choice. They've done